I was praying about this morning before we came to church, and I had this thing come to my mind back whenever I taught fifth grade, because I don't like speaking in front of crowds. The only crowds I really spoke in front of was like high school and elementary school kids. So whenever I went and taught fifth grade, I taught ELA, which is English Language Arts, which is weird because my English isn't very good. And I was that kid that I felt like my parents were going to have to sit me down at the table and say, "Daniel, how did you fail English? You speak English." And I was like, man, this is going to be rough. These kids are all in trouble. These parents are going to be upset. But whenever I got there, I realized they did something a little different at that school that I was at that we didn't do at other schools, and I thought it was cool at first. So whenever we did the Pledge of Allegiance, it was at the end of the school news show, and they put up on the screen a waving flag and a picture of John Wayne, and then they had John Wayne's voice lead the kids in the pledge. And I was like, man, this is awesome. These kids don't even know who John Wayne is. This is great. And for a while, I thought it was amazing, and then it grew on me to where I was like, man, some of these teachers aren't putting the news show on, because it was sent as an electronic file, right? So you get to choose when you watch the news show. And I said to one of the other fifth grade teachers, I was like, you remember whenever we were kids and they did the Pledge of Allegiance over the intercom, right? Everyone stood up at the same time. Everybody took their right hand and put it over their heart. Everybody was focused on the same object, and everybody was saying the same thing at the same time. And for about a half a minute on the entire campus, everybody was one. Completely unified with what they were saying, completely unified with what they were doing, completely unified in the object that they were focused on. And I thought, I think we're lacking that. And you think about what's coming up this week. In the last 4 years, when I reflect on it, that's kind of what we've done in the United States with church, is we've put it on a screen. And we've made it super convenient. You can watch it whenever you want to. You can do whatever you want to with it. But it's not the same as the intercom. We're not coming to the same spot, standing up at the same time for worship, focused on the same God, and singing the same songs at the same time and having the same prayers in our hearts. This is big. This week just feels heavy. And I don't know why it feels so heavy, because whenever you think about it, it's not different. It's not different than any other election, regardless of how important it seems. Where we get down to it, the problem is whenever we disconnect ourselves from certain things, I believe that it's very easy to create a God in your mind that is not the God of the Bible. And before you know it, you're following down one of those rabbit trails we talked about, chasing a God that's not real. You're chasing a God that's made in your own image, who's doing your will. And you end up in a place where you say, God likes the same people I like. He believes the same things I believe. He would do things exactly how I do them, exactly how I want them done. And most importantly, he would vote for the same president as me. And it's scary to think how easy that is, because the world has painted a picture of our nation where it's drawn a line down 50% of the population, and one side is the right side, one side is the wrong side, and whichever side you're on, whichever side you think is the good versus evil, depends on which news station you're listening to. It's absolute chaos and confusion, and it's tried to let the church feed into it. So much so that we get in a tizzy over these things. And it's not that these things aren't important for the church to talk about, because I believe, like most of you, that there's one clear choice that you can make. That there's one option that's the best for me and my family and my country, both of whom I love dearly, both of whom I am very blessed to be a part of. But whenever we're looking at the people on the other side, are we concerned for the people more than we're concerned for the outcome? I need help tonight, Lord. I need help, because we have gotten ourselves into a mess. And it's not just you guys or whatever, it's in general. We have created something that is not necessarily what they want you to think. They want you to think that this one's different. They want you to think that this one, even as important as it is, that this is the one that's different. Maybe you think that it's different, but I don't think it's any different than whenever I was like 6 years old and my dad explained to me what it was when we voted for the President of the United States. Because I asked him about it. It was like 1994 maybe or something. I remember it. And I said, "What is this about?" And he said to me, "Son, you're just picking the lesser of two evils." And unfortunately, it's still that way. As much as we like to play it in that it's a good versus evil, God is not going to choose abortion no matter what you say. Ever. And it burns in my heart when we have things like Amendment 4 being put on our stuff, trying to extend the timeline instead of outlawing it. We have a major problem. We have a big problem. You know, and I think that if that bothers you, if the statement bothers you a little bit, you might want to examine your mind and see if you created a God in your own image. See if you created a God that has already decided, this is how I feel about these people. This is what I think about these people. And I think the same way you think about them. And I think they should be wiped out. And I think they should be destroyed. And I think that they should pay for their sins. I think they should get exactly what's coming to them. Whenever in reality, if we all got what we deserved, we wouldn't want it. We would plead blood and mercy. Jesus paid my penalty. Please don't give it to me. But then we don't want to extend the same mercy and grace to people who are messed up. They don't know their left hand from their right hand. They are so deep in spiritual darkness, and whenever we bring the light over to them, we're so quick to point the light at their mistakes and their sin and their wrongdoings, and all it does is make them uncomfortable and say, "I'm leaving." Instead of taking that light and pointing it on the path that shows the way, the truth, and the life that brings them to rescue, and then say, "Holy Spirit, it's your job to deal with their sin. It's not mine." I had something else prepared for this, something a lot happier. And then this week I was sitting on my lunch break at work and I was praying and God dumped something on me. And I just sat there and I cried. And I felt like I'm not going to say all that. That's just too much because it's uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable because it's dealing with my problems too. And yeah, here we are. Part of the thing to think about too is, how many people, how many Jews missed out on Jesus on the first go around because they thought that he was going to show up and overthrow the Roman occupation? How many of us would miss him walking around the streets because he's not worried about getting control of the White House? We've got things to where we have determined in our minds that there's one way, one solution, only one way it can happen, whenever God's in control of all of it. It doesn't mean that he's happy. It doesn't mean he's okay with it, but it does mean that he's concerned about those people because he created them just like he created me. He created you. We have decided that the only way is the red way. It's the one with the red tie that can save us, and that's not right. It's not the one with the red tie that can save us. It's not the one with the blue tie who can save us. It's the one who's got the golden sash around his chest. It's the one whose eyes are like fire. It's the one whose voice thunders like rushing waters. It's the one who's got 7 stars in his right hand. And he looked at John. He said, "You don't have to be scared. I'm the living one. I was dead, and now I'm alive forever, and I hold the keys to death and the grave." And if that does not get your heart pumping, then you weren't listening, because Jesus Christ is in charge. He's overcome the world. He is the King of Kings. He is the Lord of Lords, and he's the one that is the least concerned about what happens on Tuesday. We're going to read out of Jonah chapter 4, if you want to turn there. While you're turning there, I'm going to recap what happens in Jonah. So you probably know the story. In the beginning of the story, God tells Jonah, "I want you to go to Nineveh, and I want you to preach against them because their evil has come up against me." And Jonah goes and he gets on a boat. He goes straight to Nineveh, and he gets the job done just like the Lord told him. Now, some of y'all read your Bibles. Absolutely not, right? Incorrect, wrong answer. He gets in the boat and he goes the wrong way. He actually goes dead opposite. And while he's on the boat, this storm comes up, and the sailors that are on the boat, these are seasoned men, and they're terrified. They are absolutely shaking in their boots because they know that there is something supernatural about what's happening here. And Jonah, because in my mind, Jonah's a very selfish person, he thinks, well, it's about me, so I'll just tell him it's about me. In his head, he's telling them, why don't you just throw me over the boat and everything will stop? And they won't do it at first. But I think that whenever I was younger, I used to think Jonah's doing that because he's realizing I've sinned. I need to self-sacrifice to save the lives of these people. And I don't think that was the case. I think Jonah was using that as another out. By the time you get to chapter 4, I realized Jonah's like, listen, I'd rather just be put out than have to do this, have to deal with this. And it's not so much the preaching that was worrying Jonah. It wasn't that he was going to have to stand in front of these people. It was that he knew who his God was. And he knew that his God was full of mercy. And he knew his God's full of grace. And he knew his God's full of unfailing love. And that there is going to be no way that God destroys these people if they repent. So he's like, take me to the water. But whenever he gets in the water, when they finally throw him over, even the sailors are repenting right then because they're like, don't hold this against us, Lord. We don't want to do this, but we don't know another way. So when he gets in the water, I think the fear of death comes over him, and he prays, and God sends him to time out and a fish, which, by the way, I want to threaten my kids with. Cross me. I will put you in the belly of a fish, and the smell will be so bad you'll cry. I won't have to do anything. We'll leave you in there for 72 hours. So he gets in the belly of the fish. Eventually, he goes out and he does what he's supposed to do. He spends 3 days in Nineveh preaching. And in my mind, whenever I see the preaching, I think it's more like a plain Jane, leave out as many details as I can. I'm just going to tell you, you're all going to die in 40 days because of what you've done. And then as he continues on for the 3 days, instead of encouraging these people, he's looking at them actually repenting. Not just saying, he's watching them go through a fast. He's watching them put on stuff that shows that they're mourning. And he's watching them not even letting their animals eat. Do we got that kind of dedication when we repent? Whenever I mess up and I say, Lord, I'm sorry I do it. I'm not going to do it anymore. Most of the time it stops right there. Sorry, Dad. Not, I am so sorry. The next 3 days, I'm not eating anything. I've let my house get so much in shambles and so off the path that not even the dog's going to eat. These people were serious, and Jonah couldn't stand it. He couldn't stand it because he knew what was coming next. I got to get a drink. I don't know how these preachers get up here and do this and don't get cotton mouth. Because my mouth is dry. All right, so we're going to pick up in chapter 4 now. Verse 1. This change of plans greatly upset Jonah, and he became very angry. He complained to the Lord about it. Didn't I say before I left home that you would do this, Lord? Didn't I tell you what was going to happen? That is why I ran away. I knew that you were merciful. I knew you were compassionate. I knew you were slow to get angry and filled with unfailing love. You are eager to turn your back from destroying people. People I think should be destroyed. People who put Amendment 4 on the ballot. Just kill me now, Lord. I'd rather be dead than alive if what I predicted will not happen. And the Lord replied, is it right for you to be angry about this? Jonah went out to the east side of the city and made a shelter to sit under. And as he waited to see what would happen, the Lord arranged for a leafy plant to grow there. Soon it spread its leaves over Jonah's head, shading him from the sun, and this eased his discomfort. Jonah was very grateful for the plant. But God also arranged for a worm. And the next morning at dawn, the worm ate through the stem of the plant so that it withered away. And as the sun grew hot, God arranged for a scorching east wind to blow on Jonah. The sun beat down on his head until he grew faint and wished to die. Death is certainly better than living like this. Been there? Most of us probably teenagers where we were doing that. I got a couple of them right now. Death is certainly better than doing these dishes. Then God said to Jonah, is it right for you to be angry because the plant died? Yes, even angry enough to die. Teenager again, so dramatic. Then the Lord said, you feel sorry about the plant, though you did nothing to put it there. It came quickly and it died quickly, but Nineveh has more than 120,000 people living in spiritual darkness, not to mention all the animals. Shouldn't I feel sorry for such a great city? Are you concerned for those who are living in spiritual darkness? Are you concerned for the people who legitimately do not know their left hand from their right hand? Are you praying, God, please forgive these people because they don't know what they're doing? Or are you praying, God, please end these people because they know exactly what they're doing? I have a feeling that if they knew who they were and they knew who their Father in heaven was, they wouldn't be acting the way they're acting. That's why when you look at things like the government, you have to remember that there are powers and principalities of the air that are behind the scenes that are pulling the strings, and they are pitting us against one another. They want nothing more than us just being upset and in a tizzy. Chaos and confusion. Are you praying to the Lord and saying, please forgive their sins as you've forgiven mine? Are you saying, God, if they knew the truth, they wouldn't be acting this way? Are you praying, God, please let your will be done, but have mercy on us because our nation has gone off the rails? We used to love you. We used to say, you come first. We used to put you in every aspect of our education system because we knew you were important. And the world has tried to make it seem like that wasn't the case. That was only there because it's just the way things got done. I don't think you become a nation like this nation became unless God had a hand in it. But the more you push him out, the more you're going to end up just like everything else, where history repeats itself, and nations and nations and nations at time after time grow great, become world leaders, and then they falter because they're more focused on themselves because it's about me. And it's not about you. It's about them. It's about bringing the light to the lost. Are you concerned for those living in spiritual darkness, or you wish God would just wipe them out? Does it anger you when the wrong people get the right blessing? God gave Jonah that plant to teach him a lesson. He was trying to tell Jonah that you are so concerned about this measly little plant because of how happy it made you feel and how comfortable it made you, that you have zero concern for the 120,000 souls that you want me to just destroy. Because I'm the only one that can do that. A man can come in and kill the body. Only God's going to take your soul. We get so frustrated about stuff, and I'm there too. Let me explain to you what my plants are like. I get mad about the plant, and I have zero concern about the people whenever my taxes go up and my paycheck goes down. Every single time. I forget about spiritual darkness, and I say, I got bills to pay. I get upset about the plant when I walk in the grocery store and I'm staring at $8 eggs and $5 milk, and I got 5 kids at the house that are waiting for those eggs and milk. I'm not worried about the salvation of everybody all of a sudden. I'm worried about how are we going to survive? How are we going to stay comfortable in our air-conditioned homes? My dad makes me laugh sometimes. He's like, man, we didn't have AC at all. That was the rich people stuff. And guess what? We've all became the rich people, and we don't even realize it. It happened like that. We're all rich, but we're constantly complaining because we like our comfort. We like our security. We like to be in control. And it goes deeper than that, too. the plant can go deeper, because the plant, sometimes you can be so mad at sin that you're not concerned about the person who's committing the sin. Like that Amendment 4 I was talking to you guys about. I read that one, and instead of it being outlawed, we're trying to extend it. And I get so mad at that I'm not thinking about the person that wrote it. I'm not thinking about how lost they are, that they don't know which way is up and which way is down. I don't care. I get so angry that my rage blinds me, and now I'm not thinking about them anymore, and I'm not praying for them. Instead, I'm saying, God, just get rid of this. And it's not wrong to be upset with it. It's not wrong to think that it's wrong, because it is. But it is wrong if you are more concerned about that than you are those people. It also fires me up when a presidential candidate mocks my faith and my God, who they're going to bow to one day, and I get so upset about that sin rather than praying for that person who said it. Because it fires me up, and I say, God, why are you even letting this happen? There has been so many times where I sit down and I say, God, I just don't understand you. I don't get it. This does not make sense to me. And whenever I'm doing that, I'm no different than Jonah, sitting out in the desert in the heat, very uncomfortable because I'm choosing to be there. Jonah was off the clock. He didn't have to be there anymore. His job was done. He could have went home. But you know what he did? I know what's going to happen. I'm going to sit here and watch it, and I'm going to make sure the Lord's upset. Knows I'm upset. Because I don't think it's okay. So I'm going to sit here and be miserable and be angry. And the whole time, God is saying, do you have this right? Are you okay? I think that we got to open up our prayer closets, our secret places, wherever it is for you. Mine is the kitchen table at the house. Whenever everybody's already asleep and in bed, we've got to open up those places, not just so we can go in there with fire and brimstone and say, God, turn this world around because I need you to turn it around. It needs to also be, God, I need you to save these people. I need you to have mercy on them. If Moses can pray for the people and God changes his mind about the people, why couldn't you pray for the people and God change his mind about the people? Because guess what? The world's already messed up. We've already read the end of the book. We know where it's going. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be standing up as Christians and doing the right thing and speaking out against evil. I am saying that whenever we're doing that, we got to remember the people first. Because he's concerned about them. And the reason why is he's telling Jonah, I made the plant, I made it grow, and I took it away. I made Lee, I made him grow, he is mine. And if we believe as Christians that he formed us in the womb and he took such great care when he put us together that he knows exactly how many hairs are on top of our heads, that means he did it for everybody else. He put each and every one of them out there and he said, this is the way that I'm going to do things. I don't care if you understand it, Daniel. Because maybe you don't understand what love is. Maybe you don't understand because to you, love is still a little bit selfish because you're stuck in a fleshly body that gets you upset. When we talk about spiritual darkness, if we talk about 120,000 people, there was a poll given in 2021 about how many people said they were Christians in the United States, and it came to about 63% of the population. And I thought, man, that sounds weird, because I don't see it. If it was 63%, things just don't add up to me. So then I did a little more research, and I found out that the Protestant subgroup of the faith isn't even the largest group of Christianity. Not saying that there's anything wrong with anybody else, but what I am saying is that they portray that number as being really big, and I think it's really small because it gets even smaller, because even into the more subgroups, only 30% of those people go to church. 63% say, I'm a Christian. 30% of the 63 say, I go to church. And I'm not an expert, but I think if you're not coming, you're probably in spiritual darkness because you've already created a God in your own mind that's not the God of the Bible. You've already decided what he would do, what he would say, and exactly how he feels about everybody else. Only 30% of that number. That means that there are 289 million people in the United States that are living in spiritual darkness. And God was so concerned about 120,000 that he made this point to us. And you put 120 up to 289 million, that looks measly. I think that we thought it was measly. We do things like we push kids away all the time. You want to change elections, you want to change the nation, you want to change the government, you need to start winning the hearts of the kids back. And the way you start doing that is you stop paying for stuff that is not godly. This entertainment system we got is out of control. Movies, music, everything I grew up on, I was told whatever you let in is what's going to come out. And whenever I show up to work tomorrow morning, I'm going to see everything that was let in because I work at a middle school. I get cussed up and down daily. Every single day. These kids are full of rage. They've been exposed to so much violence and hatred and sexual immorality that they think it's just normal. And we have sixth graders walking around. Sixth graders walking around participating in the same thing. These kids are 11 and 12 years old. Are we concerned with them being in the spiritual darkness that they're in? Whenever we hold things at church and people come from the outside, like the fall festival, people come and guess what? They ain't got it all together. Some of them, their parents are trying to drop them off. And those are the ones that everybody's like, well, I can't believe why they're here. They're ruining everything. We just went and watched a movie last night called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, and I would suggest you go see it because it is amazing. Everyone who is a churchgoer needs to go because it's going to remind you what the church is for and what the gospel is really about. Because there are a group of kids who are absolute bullies. They are mean, they are nasty, they will beat you up, flip you over, shake you upside down, and take your lunch money. I mean, bad to the bone kids. And until one of the kids gets fed up and said, you know what, you can take my snacks all you want to. Because guess what? 2 days is Sunday, and I'm going to get all the snacks I want at church. And he names all of them off. And this kid gets fire in his belly, and he's so upset. So he goes home and he tells his 5 siblings, I know where we can get some snacks. And guess who shows up to church? And guess who's upset about it? Everybody in the building. The ones that they should have wanted there from the beginning, the ones they should have been reaching out to from the beginning, the one they should have said, please, God, let them walk through these doors because we'll jump up and down. They walked through the doors and everybody went, oh. Were you guys looking for the liquor store? Like, this isn't, I don't understand what's happening here. And so they show them in. The Sunday school teacher loses her mind because she's like, I don't know what you want me to do with these guys. And then it goes all the way up to where they hijack the Christmas play. And the parents are so upset and they're so mad. And they're saying, why? They're looking at the teacher saying, why are you letting them do this? I don't understand. You know my kid always does this part. You know her kid always does this part. You know this happens like this. And they are so mad because kids are coming up, regardless that they had never heard the Christmas story before. In fact, whenever they're getting told the Christmas story, their reaction was, well, what happens to Herod? Did they kill him? They were more concerned that somebody was trying to kill Jesus, and they said, well, did they go get him? Because that's what their life was like. That's the spiritual darkness that they were living in. They didn't know any different. They didn't know their left hand from their right hand, and they didn't have any adults that wanted to spend the time to teach them because they said, well, that's the parents' fault, and the parents aren't around, so I guess they're on their own. We got kids in our community that are messed up. They are messed up big time, and they don't want to come to church because whenever they come to church, They think everything's just hunky-dory and all this and that because we have a problem with it. Because sometimes we get so sensitive to people doing the wrong thing that we gasp. I can't believe you just said that. Whenever Jeff Davis used to stand up here and say, sinners are good at sinning, don't be surprised. If you're going to go out there and you're going to minister to them, guess what? You better have some thick skin because they're going to come back at you. But if you're just focused on pointing that light on what they're doing wrong, they're not coming back. Because this becomes a building of shame rather than rescue and mercy and grace and healing. All those things we know Jesus is, they hear Jesus and they think, he hates my guts. He wouldn't like me. I've heard all the things that he's about. There are kids at the school that I work at think so low of themselves. They don't think they're worth anything because it's constantly in their face. The screens have taken over. They have people in their ears all the time. When I got up and went to school and went home, I didn't talk to anybody till the next day. These kids are talking to each other all day long. And not only are they talking to each other all day long, they're constantly saying, so-and-so said this about you. Well, they said this about you. Well, this person said this. Are we concerned about that? Are we concerned that all the things that we're just moving along? Because whenever I look around the church, there's not many kids that are coming. And I'm not saying it's all our fault. But what I am saying is something has to change. The numbers across the board for every single church is getting older and older and older. And the younger people are saying, there is no God. It doesn't matter. I get to choose for myself. At one point in your life, you chose for yourself. And then somebody reached out to you and showed you the path to rescue. Somebody's got to stand up and do that for these kids. Whenever you're out and about, that's your opportunity. That was a rabbit trail, in case you were wondering, Dr. Rakes. I believe that when we look at things like this week, the government's important because the government does do some things that I think that it has to do. But the government's only good with things that I would call a head problem. Things like managing money, even though they're not very good at it. Things like innovation, things like structure, things like common sense justice. I think that the government, that's what it should do. And guess what? In order to do that, you can have a very, very small government. All you need is a few dedicated individuals with their head on straight. We don't have that. And I also think that the government should not be dealing with heart problems. Because when the government deals with heart problems, which is the church's job, that's when you end up with things like Amendment Number 4. You can choose for yourself. They say that whenever it's no different than Adam and Eve in the garden. I did something, and now I have a consequence for what I did, and I want to sweep it under the rug. I don't care who suffers. I care about me. My stomach always churns whenever I get up here, and I've only been up here twice. Every time, I am just, I feel like I'm going to puke every other second. You would think that would make my mouth water, but it makes it dry. I figured out that whenever I wasn't preaching out of this, I was actually going to do John chapter 8, but whenever God spoke to my heart on this, and he brought me to Jonah chapter 4, he just let me know, that's what you're doing, Daniel. Every time you sit and stew over this, you are sitting out. You don't even have to be there. You don't have to be there, but you're choosing to be there. You're choosing to watch it. You're choosing to participate. You're choosing to be miserable. I want to close with this, and then hopefully we have enough time to do some prayer because I think that we're going to need it because it doesn't matter what the outcome is on Tuesday. Half the people are going to be very upset, disgruntled, and thinking God let them down because it's on both sides. And I think our nation needs us to lift them up. But I want to say this. one of the things, God knows that Kayla and I have a soft spot in our heart for kids. And Kayla was reading a book a couple weeks ago. It was a book that her uncle recommended to me, and I just never got around to reading it because I just can't keep up with life. But since Kayla's a brainiac, she's able to do all those things that I can't do. So she's reading this book, and it comes to a point where it talks about, it's given a testimony of something that happened with a guy. So he takes his daughter out, and while he takes his daughter out, he buys her something nice, like a dress or shoes or something like that, because he hasn't been around, he hasn't been doing the dad thing. He wants to make this right. And then on the way back, because he feels so good about himself, he decides, I'm going to stop at the bar and I'm going to have a drink because I deserve it. I earned it. I've been doing good. I need to go in there and take care of business. So he stops. He leaves his girl in the car. Heater's going because it's literally freezing outside. He goes inside, and he's only going to have one drink. But then he runs into his buddies. And one turned into two turned into three, and before he knew it, time had got away from him, and they're shutting the place down. He's like, oh, I left my daughter outside. So he gets out to the car's already shut off, and where he gets to her, she's nearly frozen to death. It's so bad, the frostbite was so bad that they had to cut off parts of her body to save her life. And I said, God, I don't understand you. Because the whole purpose of the story was God talking about God restoring this guy. And I said, what about the little girl? There is no amount of compensation anybody could ever come up with that's going to fix her problems. She's going to have to live with that for the rest of her life. And this guy just goes. Because that's what really fires me up. And I remember sitting on my porch and praying about this, just something that Kayla told me out of a book, and saying, God, I don't understand you. And it's not often you get a clear response from God on things, but I felt it clear as day. He said to me, Daniel, I love you. And I just sat there and cried because I was like, well, if he loves me, he's got to love everybody. Just because in our minds we justify who's done worse, who doesn't think like me, there's no way God likes you because you think that this is okay. I didn't make them. I didn't put them here. I didn't take the care and dedication into forming them to who I want them to be. And then I didn't show them unfailing love of sending them out and saying, you choose. I love you, but I'm not going to make you love me. If you choose to come up and pray at the altar while we sing a song or two, I want you to focus on the people in our country that are living in spiritual darkness. I don't want you to worry so much about the outcome of Tuesday because God's not worried so much about the outcome of Tuesday. What he is worried about is the outcome of everybody's hearts. If we're going to go out and show the characteristic of God, we're not going to go out and say, I can't believe they did it again. Or, see there? Told you we win. Because there are people out there that don't know what's going on. They don't understand everything like we understand. And they're just going to be hurt by it. And in fact, so many of them are going to say, that's very Christian of you. Typical Christian. Thinks he knows everything. All right, let's go ahead and just wrap this up. Let's go ahead and pray, and then we'll open up the altars. So, Father.